Hello and welcome to the Property Roundup here on iPropertyRadio with myself, Carol Tallon, the show where we chat to industry experts to get a view on activity on the ground and to learn about new trends emerging. This show is sponsored by daft.ie, Ireland's most visited property website. Today, I'm delighted to be joined by a returning guest, Patrick Folan, Director at iamsold bidding platform. Patrick, you're very welcome. Thank you for joining us today.
Good morning, Carol. How are you?
Good. Patrick, I always love when we get to do our check-ins with iamsold because I really feel like we've seen so much of the company's growth. So just for people who might not be familiar, you might just describe the work that the team at iamsold are doing.
Sure. And thanks for having me as well. As you know, we work with lots of different agents around the country. So we work with about 300 different auctioneers between Ireland and Northern Ireland. So based in Galway. We have an office in Belfast as well. And our main focus these days, it's changed over the years, as you say, but our probably main focus, well, we started with online auctions and that is our core business. The main benefits have probably changed. Time frames is what's become important to agents and their clients, and that's where we've been able to help. So I suppose our main focus has been reducing the time it takes for properties to transact. So we have it down to roughly about 6 weeks to sell a property and 6 weeks to close. The closing being the area where we can really, I suppose, add value. So if someone sale agrees a property via the private treaty approach, on average in Ireland, it's taking about 4 to 6 months to close the sale from there, including rural and urban properties. So with ourselves, it's on average about 6 weeks to sell. Contract signed straight away, no risk of it falling through, or very, very little risk of it falling through. And it's a faster sales approach, I suppose. So certain clients will want a faster sales approach for whatever reason. It might mean they have started a job in London and they're moving in January and they don't want this hanging over them while the move is happening. Or other ones might be, you might have an issue with a property whereby there's no septic tank, or the septic tank is outside of the boundary, and the client might just want a secure process. So it's all walks of life, all types of properties, but we're here as a platform for agents when they need us.
That's quite an interesting progression as well, because look, in terms of cutting down the time it takes to, I suppose, really the conveyance side of a property, we know that that's extremely valuable. I think, outside of the auction process, one of the things that has really held Ireland back, and certainly I've been complaining about it quite vocally for about 15 years, but our dual deposit system, our book deposit and our contract deposit, nobody wins. Genuinely nobody wins. And the longer a procedure takes, and I know this from kind of 20 years ago back in the conveyancing side of it, the longer a transaction takes to close, then the more likelihood of it's going to fall through. And that's been well borne out by the stats. So in terms of taking the process from the traditional 4 to 6 months down to 6 weeks, is that all by preparing to go to auction, whether you actually go to auction or not?
It's two-pronged, I suppose, but yes, the first step and probably the most important step is getting everything together at an earlier stage, which isn't rocket science. It's a process that has to happen whatever way the property sells. Just with our process, when we are instructed to sell a property, we'll ask where are the title deeds. We'll try and preempt it even before we're instructed. If the title deeds are with a bank, go and draw them down if they're about to kind of come on the market with ourselves. Once we have the letters of engagement back in, we have a section which says where's the deeds, who's your solicitor, and we'll get straight on to the solicitors to advise them that we're going to auction with the property and we need the legal pack. We'll start the process with people in the office whose their sole job is to follow up on that legal pack, not harass, but to try to make sure that the necessary works are happening to get a legal pack in place. And we have it down to this year around 21 days. If we get the instruction letters today, in 21 days, we should have a full legal pack in place, which is still longer than we'd like, but it's actually very reasonable in the environment we're working in, I suppose. So getting the documents together earlier, that will highlight issues. If you have a bungalow in the country, nice family home, there'll be certificates of compliance, there'll be boundaries, there'll be bits and pieces in planning that maybe aren't available. Oh God, we didn't realize we needed a retention or letter of exemption for the extension. So by preparing it earlier, you're also highlighting actually what are the issues that might crop up, and you can make decisions based on that. Usually we can work with them. Usually you can plow ahead to market with maybe, some item to be provided on closing, such as or before the bids are received, maybe such as a letter of exemption and an extension or something like that. So by getting to it earlier, you're, number one, front loading the work, and number two, highlighting what the potential problems might be. And if you find out about them early in the process, they don't become an issue. Whereas if you find out after they've been sale agreed, that's when it can be a bigger problem, I suppose. And so that's step one. And then step two is, okay, there's interested parties, they're going to bid on the property. Their buyer, or the buyer solicitor, or the proposed buyer solicitor, will review the legal pack prior to bidding and make sure they're happy with that. They'll still raise queries as they would normally. We just find when it's not sale agreed, when there's an impending date coming up, it does, I suppose, speed the process up, and we find that the buyer solicitor will raise the pertinent questions that they need to raise. We'll get them answered, ideally within a few days, not weeks, and then they'll advise their client whether they're happy or not. There could be a second set of questions, so that's fine, but it all happens within days and weeks, not months, I suppose. And that's the big difference, I suppose, is that you're front loading the legal pack, and the buyer solicitor is also reviewing that before they're happy and advising their client to proceed.
Look, that's a really important message, and it's one that maybe it's important from an auction point of view, but I know even on the private treaty side that IPAV and others have done really good work in trying to tackle this issue. And we know we have the legal seller pack now, so or the seller's legal pack now. So, this is an important endeavour. But over the last 7-8 years, I've come across so many startups who've really tried to tackle this issue, and there's been quite resistance from the Law Society to streamline things. So it's good that moves are being made. But I suppose auctions have always had the perception of being able to do things quickly. But what I'm really interested in, not just iamsold, but auctions in general, the profile of properties that are coming through auction has really changed as well. So talk to us a little bit about, the type of property that, say you've an upcoming auction now on the 14th of December. Well, what kind of profile of seller and property are we likely to see included there?
Sure, yeah, and we'll be delighted to get our last auction of the year out of the way on the 14th. It's been a busy year. In terms of the profile, it really has changed in the last few years. Historically, going back pre-boom and into boom, the trophy homes, the high value homes would have been auctioned, and an element of house on land, that agricultural side of things would have been auctioned as well. And that they were the main segments of the market that were auctioned, the odd probate maybe as well. Then fast forward to post boom crash period, it became the distressed homes. It became all of the properties that maybe the banks were involved in, and I suppose auction almost flipped on its head to being the less attractive of the property profile that were being auctioned. Since, I suppose, the last 10 or 15 years, we're in business around 11 years now, we have been trying and somewhat successful in dealing with all types of properties. So the profile, if you go onto our website at any one time, we'll have the trophy homes, we'll have the doer-uppers in the country that need full renovation, but we'll also have a good segment of the middle of the market, normal family homes. Why that is, we are flexible in terms of selling prior to auction as well as going to auction, and that does suit a big segment of the market. So if there's a nice family home and a mortgage buyer comes to us and they said, look, I want to buy this property before, but I can't maybe bid under auction because I won't be able to decide in 10 seconds or 15 seconds whether I can increase. I won't have that decision making in that time. So we will get a sense from the owners what they take to sell today. And if that buyer is at that level, we give them the legal pack, they'll go to their bank with it and their solicitor, they'll get all their ducks in a row. It can still take a few weeks, and unfortunately with the banks there, I would have said maybe a couple of years ago, it could take 2 or 3 weeks to get probably everything lined up that they'd be signing contracts on the property. Now it could be anything from 1 or 2 in a cash buyer, but a mortgage buyer could be 4 to 6. So it's taking longer with some of the banks. So we're having to try to manage that, I suppose, process as well, and explain to the vendors that, look, this is the timeframes we're dealing with here with this party. But quite often, the owners are, if providing they're happy with the level, they'll give the go ahead at 500,000 or 400,000 or whatever the offer level is. But the property doesn't come off the market until they put their definite bid in. So we're not taking a booking deposit as you would private treaty. It stays on the market. So it does give the vendor comfort that, okay, we're not putting all our eggs in this basket. But at the same time, they're giving them the go ahead that they will do the deal with them at the level once their mortgage is finalized on the house, and once their solicitor is happy with the legal pack. So because of that flexibility, we're able to deal with a different segment of buyers, and therefore a different segment of property types, I suppose.
Would you have any idea off the top of your head what proportion of deals would be sale agreed in advance prior to the auction date?
So we're well above 50% now. We're probably tracking towards 60+% this year overall, and growing, I suppose. So it's a big percentage of the market. I think auctions can really suit where there's loads of people bidding and the activity is high. The online auction does work well, particularly if you have the right type of buyer for the right type of property. What we're seeing this year is our inquiry levels are up 50% on last year, and our stock is almost identical. So it's not an increase in stock skewing the figures. Inquiry levels are over 50% up, but bid levels are well down, as in not everyone is bidding, and when they're bidding, they're not bidding as much, if that makes sense. So where we might have seen last year 6 or 7 people bidding regularly, this year there might be 6 or 7 people interested, but the first couple of bids come on and the rest rule it out. They're not bidding up to those premium levels that we were seeing last year. So quite often you're dealing with 1 or 2 that are serious bidders. They want to buy the property, but you're not seeing the same level of activity. So for that reason, you'll naturally see less properties going to auction where there's 6 people bidding. The vendors are more likely to do maybe accept a bid prior to going to auction because they're happy with their 1 or 2 bids that have come in and they're at the right level.
That's a really interesting dynamic. And I mentioned to you off air that I'd been looking at a property and they just never got around to, and there is something almost psychologically about the auction process. And obviously in a previous life I was involved heavily in buying properties auction, so it's not that the process would faze me. It just seems like a lot of work. And I know that's not the case, but I think it's interesting to see inquiries up, bids down. And you touched on it really in your earlier point there about the huge percentage of sales that are being done in advance of the auction day. Is this coming down to the profile of buyers, and those buyers tend to be first-time buyers or mortgaged home buyers, and the fact that even though every mortgage company will say they support bidders at auction, they really on the ground at a practical sense don't. There's still too much risk. So does the level of inquiries up, the bids down, the deals that are being done in advance, does that tally with people needing to depend on a mortgage and wanting the security of not doing it through an auction process?
There's definitely an element of that, yeah. The types of properties we're dealing with are becoming more and more your family homes. The cash buyers out there, the guys that are looking for value, there's not as many of them out there anymore. There's still plenty, but they're not as plentiful as they would have been. The sort of properties where they would have been buying maybe, a bit of value. There's not actually, there's not many good value properties that are, seem to be just excellent value for money. The market has done quite well over the last few years, particularly in, I suppose 2020, there was a jump, 2021, it done quite well. And the market now is at a level where a lot of the buying pool are your normal homeowners, business owners, maybe one-off investor type characters. There's not loads of cash investment pumped into the market right now. So yeah, your buyer profile is slightly different than it would have been, and our business is probably dealing with maybe more and more family homes as well, and that's impacting on the way, the method of I suppose how the property is sold in the end.
I'm curious then, does that tally with what we're seeing in terms of landlords, private landlords exiting the market? Because, traditionally it would have been buy-to-let investors who were bidding, and they would have presented as cash buyers, even if they were leveraging the properties immediately afterward. They would have presented at auction as cash buyers. Do you have any stats in terms of, say, buy-to-let landlords who are bringing their property to auction but not replacing those properties? So you essentially have home buyers buying the previous buy-to-lets and no significant level of new landlords coming into the market.
Sure. I don't have stats, but I have some probably feedback on it. we're definitely seeing your homes, your not apartments, but let's take 3-bedroom semis that might have been buy to let. They're not at a level. Generally, they're making prices that are stronger than an investor would buy anyway. So most of that segment of the market, your homes, your bungalows, your 3-bedroom semis, your estate houses, they're generally going to homeowners. Then the types of properties that have been sold to landlords, there's still some of them out there, and there's still parts of the country, there's still a bit of value. You go into the Midlands, you go into different counties, you can still find reasonably priced properties, but mainly it's apartments, or something maybe subdivided. We'd be dealing with pre-63 type properties in Dublin more so than anywhere else. Apartments, it may be a location that for some reason isn't attractive to homeowners. Maybe it's a in a bigger built up area and there's lots of blocks of apartments around. Maybe that maybe the investor might come in there, but the normal segment, the normal houses, the normal estate homes, they are going to homeowners largely, and they're not being replaced by landlords. The regulation obviously around being a landlord has become quite unattractive, particularly with your 1 and 2, I suppose your larger investors. They can work through that red tape, I suppose, whereas your one-off investor, where I suppose you have to now register the tenants every single year. You have to obviously go through the rent pressure zones where you can't increase, only a very small amount per year. And a lot of those landlords, if they were charging quite a reasonable rent, say, 10 years ago they started charging and they never put the rent up. They can't put the rent up very much now. So in fact, if they were charging a very low rent, the tenant leaves. And they say, okay, well, what will we do? Will we hold on to this and get continue to get maybe quite a poor rent that's maybe half of market value, maybe less, we can't put that up, or will we sell? And most of them will sell because it's not worth their while holding on to it. By the time you pay your tax on income, by the time you pay your insurance, if they're on a low rent anyways, and particularly if they're on a tracker mortgage or they're on a variable mortgage, the interest rates are gone so high, it doesn't actually, they have to put their hand in their pocket every month to hold on to that property that's making them a poor income. There's very little, attractive, there's very little incentive for them to stay in as a landlord.
That is such a recurring theme on the show here, and only in recent weeks, I've spoken to Harry Southern from REA in Carlow and Regina Mangan from Liberty Blue in Waterford, and the same issues are coming up. It is just not attractive for landlords. So this seems to be a recurring issue, and policy is definitely, despite all of the political commentary, policy is definitely not supporting the landlords that we need in the market. And even as recently as in the last couple of weeks, having the IMF talk about how rent caps are not doing the job they were supposed to do, and actually they are probably hindering the supply of new homes to the rental market, which is what we need to reduce the costs of the monthly rentals on consumers. There's just this lack of joined up thinking. So I know it's something that we've covered a lot on the show, and we probably won't get into it today just because I know it's something we've covered a lot. But actually, there's something that I was really keen to talk to you about, and while I love always learning about the growth of iamsold, because it's amazing to see the hub of innovation you have across your team there based out of Galway, but I know serving kind of 300 plus agents right across Ireland, we love seeing that kind of regional innovation that's really impacting and improving the market across Ireland. You're doing something even more now. You were recently appointed as the chairperson for the consortium steering group for the apprenticeship scheme for property, which is crucially important to us. So first of all, talk to us a little bit about, maybe explain for people who aren't familiar, what is the property apprenticeship scheme and how is it working?
Yeah, well, thanks for that introduction. And yeah, I've been asked to act as the chairperson for the last couple of years now. It's probably close to 2 years, and it's a course or a program that started around 6 years ago, a badly needed program as well. Started in Dublin and Cork, and the following year, about 5 years ago, they introduced a centre in Athenry and Galway. So the apprenticeship course is it's open to people looking to become licensed in the sector. And just to give you a bit of background, and I'm sure most of the listeners will know, 20 years ago when I did my course, you didn't need actual license. You could become a bonded auctioneer by paying a fee, and you didn't need a third level qualification. Then around 2012, they introduced a licensing, where new entrants into the property market needed to have a level 6 certificate, third level certificate, which is a 2-year course, generally speaking. Obviously, so from going from no need for license or for qualifications to a need of a 2-year certificate course, there was a real vacuum within the industry as it started to open up from the bust period, where businesses were starting to do a level of business again. So probably towards 2014, 15, when things started to move again, there was a need for staff and new blood coming into the industry, but there was actually very few outlets or courses available to get into the industry. So a lot of the people working in it had left the industry and were gone into different fields because the jobs they had probably dried up, and there was no actually new graduates coming in. So we had been I studied my course in GMIT. We had been speaking with GMIT to see would they re-establish their course there, but there didn't seem to be enough appetite or enough confidence maybe in the sector at that stage. So it was a real issue, becoming a bigger issue. So the government, in fairness to them, have got this very right. They've pushed the apprenticeship schemes across different industries, and in the property sector, it seems to be working really, really well. We're really happy with the process, I suppose. So it's a 2-year course where the apprentice spends 1 day a week either in the college or online, depending on the modules on that day. And the rest of the week is spent in the class, or in the office, I should say, or in the business. So they're doing a lot of work probably outside of those hours with projects and presentations and things like that. But they're getting a really good grasp for the theory within the course, and then the practical within the business. So at the end of the 2 years, they're actually fairly seasoned property personnel. Whereas I think when I came out of my 4-year full-time degree in property, I had all my theory. I could value anything you like, but I couldn't speak to people in a way that was probably needed within the business. So you're really getting, I think, a nice blend of learning in and out of the classroom, and thankfully it's working really well. So I think we've 260 apprentices in place for this year, between first year and second year, between the Dublin, which is in the Baldbridge College, Cork, and the Galway, the GRTB as well. So that's a brief premise of the course, and delighted to be involved in it as well.
Oh, that's fantastic. Thank you so much. I really welcome the push that the current government has made towards almost bringing back apprenticeships for all sorts of things, from accountancy through to all the trades we need in construction. And it's something that, again, actually, we've spoken to TU Dublin about their apprenticeship model and the different schemes that are available there. And it's fantastic to see it working. And for property, it's exactly what we want. It's exactly what we want to see. We want to welcome the next generation of talent. And I think you've touched on something really important there. And it's good that you have the awareness to know, that when you came out of college, yes, you had the technical training, but actually when you get into the real world environment and you're dealing with people, and people have a very deep connection to their properties and to their business premises and to their land, that sometimes it takes more than just the valuation techniques. You also have to be able to communicate and bring the owner of a property along with you on the journey of valuing that. Sure. And at the end of the day, property is absolutely a people skill. Can you tell us a little bit about the dynamic or the cohort of apprentices? Like 260 people, that's a huge figure. So that's fantastic to see across year 1 and year 2 of the apprenticeships. It's a good number to be coming into the industry. We want this next generation of talent, but can you share any insights in terms of the profile of people doing it? Are these nearly all school leavers? Are they coming in at mid or senior career level? What kind of disciplines are they coming from?
Sure. And yeah, it has been interesting to follow that, actually, because I've been involved for about 4 or 5 years now with the board, I suppose, and the steering group. And I think when the courses started, a lot of it was I've been working with this auctioneers in administration for 5 years, and I now want to become qualified. And I have we have someone within the office that would like to do that. A lot of it was people already within the industry looking to become qualified, and that was great. It was great to get those people qualified and give them an opportunity. While still working in the job, there were still 4 days a week or whatever their working hours were within the role, and then 1 day a week in the course. So they weren't completely losing the connection with their employer. And that is important. Each apprentice needs to have an employer. They can't just come off their own back and to say, okay, I want to do the apprenticeship. They need to have an employer to support them through those other days of the week, I suppose, where they're working, and give them that practical knowledge, I suppose. So the first few years were very much higher weighted towards the currently in the industry, but that's really changed now. And I know a lot of school leavers are going straight in. So now it's more the younger, I suppose, profile that coming through. I know D&G do a very good transition year module with different students and schools around the country. So the profile and the awareness of this apprenticeship for young school leavers is growing quite a lot. So it's actually now weighted more towards that, to the younger generation. And I don't have the stats in front of me, but I do know there's been a good international participation as well. So I think there's around Europe, there's been several countries every year with students within the apprenticeship, and then around other parts of the world as well. So it's not just a local Irish only profile. It's very much mixed, and that's great to see. And it's nice to see the younger generations coming into it as well, because at the end of the day, that's what the industry needs in the coming years ahead, is more and more younger people getting into the business to support existing businesses, to start their own businesses, and to do whatever they want within the industry.
Very good. And with new people coming in, whether they're coming in as young school leavers or people who've been in the industry for a number of years, when you've new people coming in with a new focus, it opens up the avenues for innovation. So across the apprenticeship model, is there a focus on perhaps new or emerging business models for the business of property? Because the business of property globally is changing, and I'm not sure how responsive Ireland has been to some of those changes. And I don't just mean in terms of adopting emerging technologies, but I mean, look at iamsold. That was a different business model for delivering property in Ireland. Is there much of a focus on that in the course?
It's interesting. Obviously, I'm an advocate for emerging technology and staying up to date with what the market needs, I suppose, and that very much coming through on the CSG group, the consortium steering group as well. So I suppose part of our role, and I suppose a big part of it, is to steer the course the way we feel industry needs. So we've really good industry experts. So we've representation from Savills, from Sher Fitzgerald, we've Maeve Hogan from the PSRA, we've Pat Davitt from IPAB, James Lonergan from SESI. So we've really good representation within the group, and that allows us to, I suppose, have fairly robust conversations around what the industry needs. Through COVID, that was really interesting, because how do we survive was more the course was quite new at that stage, and we had to obviously go online, and then after COVID we decided to stay maximum 40% online, but still felt the need for in-person classes. So the steering group is there to steer, I suppose, in the best way we can, and part of that has been with the ICT side of things and the emerging technologies. So we would arrange generally on Zoom with the 3 centres, one-off training on different sides of the business with different people who might be experts in that area. So we try to keep up to date with emerging technologies through the normal course, but also with maybe guest speakers coming in to discuss. So that's been quite useful, and that's been quite interesting and quite topical over the last while, with a very changing property world. Again, the COVID years probably pushed us into a world where we needed to embrace your Zoom technology, your online auction maybe technology, your digital marketing side of things with floor plans and aerial photos. And so the world of property in Ireland has changed and is, whether it likes it or not, now, in a space where digital technology is very important to the industry. So I think the school leavers or the apprenticeship leavers need to have awareness of that and hopefully be drivers of that as well, because they're going in 4 days a week to their office. They're learning about different things that maybe that company they work with doesn't currently have or know about or use. And we'd like to think that they are, a source of knowledge for the employers as well. That should be a big part of it. They're coming out with benefits maybe that employer doesn't have, and hopefully taking on some of what they offer up as maybe words of wisdom from the course.
Patrick, that's fantastic. I love, I love that idea of almost cross mentoring. So you've got people coming in and they're indeed being mentored by seasoned professionals 4 days a week, when they're not on their courses, but that they are in return actually maybe updating those their employer on new trends that they're learning about through their course. So I love that idea of reverse mentoring. It's incredibly important. And look, I really echo your call, and I hope that the apprentices coming out are empowered, not just to know what technologies are emerging, but actually to, empowered to challenge what they see when they come out. Because sometimes fresh perspective is exactly what we need to maybe shine a light on some inefficiencies or deficits in our business model or in how we deliver services. So actually, I can see a massive role for the new cohort of talent to actually be drivers of innovation. So it's a really important one. So thank you so much for sharing that with us today. And hopefully in 2024, we're going to be touching base with you again. And hopefully we'll get to interview some of the recent apprentices about their journey and maybe their expectations and their ambitions for the marketplace. So I'm very much looking forward to that. So my thanks again. That was Patrick Folan, Director at iamsold Bidding Platform. My thanks as always to Katie Tallon and to the production team at Hear Me Roar Media. And huge thanks to our show sponsor, daft.ie, Ireland's most visited property website. And thank you indeed for tuning in. We'll catch you on the next episode of the Property Roundup. In the meantime, please be sure to check out all of the other shows, real estate and construction shows on iPropertyRadio.